All right, so for today, we're starting section 414, which is called finding polynomial functions given the roots. What that basically means is, in normal English, if I give you all the answers, can you tell me the equation that it came from? Okay, can you write out the equation that this came from? Okay, and I gave you all the solutions. I told you that one of the answers is 2, one is -3, one is 5. Can you tell me where it came from? This is actually very, very simple, but it does require a lot of multiplication. Okay, but it is not difficult to do. Okay, so for example, number 1, you see it says find the polynomial function. So in other words, find the equation where these answers came from, right? If the roots are, remember, roots mean roots, zeros, solutions, answers. Those are 4 different ways you can say that word, roots. So the answers are 2, -3, and 5. So here's how I'm going to ask you guys to do it, just to kind of make it as easy as possible for you. So you always write down your roots. So you're going to say, okay, one of the answers was x equals to 2. Another answer was x equal to -3. And another answer was x equal to 5. What we're basically going to do is solve, but backwards. So before I used to tell you, hey, here's a formula, let's factor it out, get all these factors, set them equal to 0, find their answers, and all our answers used to come out like this, right? They used to say x equals 1, x equals -3, etc. So I'm giving you the answers. I'm saying let's build it backwards. Let's go back to where this came from, right? So for me to get x equal to 2, if I move the 2 over to the other side, I get x minus 2 equals 0. And I'm going to do this. Okay? For the other ones, I'm going to move the -3 over. I get x plus 3 equals 0. And I'm going to put that right there. And then for this last one, I'm going to move that 5 over. I get x minus 5 equals 0. Do you guys remember doing that? Like getting each factor, setting it equal to 0? Now, before I used to get each factor and set it equal to 0, what did it look like? Wasn't it all just a big bunch of things multiplied together and we used the zero product property to break them apart? In other words, it looked like this. X minus 2, x plus 3, x minus 5 equal to 0. That's what it used to look like before. So read it from the bottom up. We used to have x minus 2, x plus 3, x minus 5 equal to 0. Then we used to split them apart, and then we used to solve them, right? Read it this way, and it'll make a little bit more sense to you what's happening, right? That's the way we used to do it, from the bottom up. We used to get the factor first, and then set each part equal to 0, and then solve. Well, before that, they had to look like a big equation. So all I'm going to do now is just multiply everything out. Okay, so let me multiply the first two. So this is the part where I told you this gets a little weird because it's going to be a lot of multiplication. Okay, let's multiply this first. Okay, so I'll keep it green just so we can see it. So x times x, that's going to be x squared. I'm going to put a parenthesis here because I'm still going to need it. So that's going to be x squared. X times 3, that's 3x. And now let's do the other part of it. -2 times x is -2x. And -2 times 3 is -6. And then I still have this x minus 5 here. But it's okay. We're kind of moving there, okay? Let's combine my like terms on the inside. So a positive 3x minus a 2x, that's a positive x, so 1x. So here we go. I have x squared plus x minus 6 times x minus 5 equals 0. All right, so now that I have that, let me multiply the remaining two factors, okay? So we'll go with, I'm going to kind of backwards multiply if you guys don't mind, okay? I'm going to go this way. So here we go. This is going to be x times x squared, that's x cubed. X times x, that's x squared. X times -6, that's -6 x. Actually, let me move this down a little bit. Give me a second, because I want some room for the blue markings. All right, now let me do the negative 5 part. So the negative 5 is going to multiply 3 things as well. So negative 5 times x squared is negative 5x squared. Negative 5 times x is a negative 5x. And negative 5 times negative 6 is a positive 30. This is my function. I just got to write it out properly, okay? F of x equals to that. Let me just fix everything and I'm done. Let me combine my like terms. So does x cubed have a like term besides just the x cubed? No, there's no other x cubed. Do I have x squareds in common? Yeah, I have a positive x squared minus 5x squared. That's negative 4x squared. All right, I got those. X to the firsts. I have a negative 6x minus a 5x. That's negative 11x. And then my number, that's 30. And this is my answer for this problem. Okay, I found the function where all of that came from. Okay, that's the function where all of that stuff came from. And factor these things, and it should be good. So let's do another one. This one says find the polynomial function if its zeros are negative 2, multiplicity 2, and 0. So this time they said zeros, not roots. But remember, roots, zeros, solutions, answers, they all mean the same thing. They're saying your answers are negative 2 with the multiplicity of 2 and 0. What does it mean if negative 2 has a multiplicity of 2? In terms of answers, how many times does that answer happen? Twice, right? Multiplicity 2 means it happens 2 times. So let me write my answers. X is negative 2. X is negative 2. And x is 0. Those are my 3 answers. Let me move my numbers over to the left side, right? So I can see what they look like as factors. So I'm going to move the negative 2 over. This is x plus 2 equal to 0. If I do it here, it's going to be x plus 2 equal to 0. And then the last one, I can't really do anything. It's just x equal to 0. I can't move the 0 over. All right, so let me multiply all my factors. I got an x plus 2, an x plus 2, and an x. So I can write it out like this. X plus 2, x plus 2, x equals to 0. Now I'm going to multiply everything out. So let's start off with the first two here. So I'm going to get x times x and x times 2. So x times x, that's x squared. I'm going to put in a parenthesis like I've been telling you guys. Just put them in parentheses for now. And then x times 2, that's 2x. And then let's do the other ones. 2 times x, 2 times 2. So 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 2 is 4. And then I still have a times x in the front. Or in the back, shall I say. All right, let me fix the inside of that multicolored multiplication. So this becomes x squared plus 4x plus 4 times x equals to 0. Okay, so I fixed everything on the inside. And now just get that x on the right side and multiply it in. Okay, let's just multiply that x in. So it's going to go here, there, and there. So x squared times x is x cubed. Okay, x times 4x, that's 4x squared. And x times 4, that's 4x. And this should be equal to 0. But remember, the 0 doesn't matter. I just want to write that that's my function. This is the function where it came from. All right, so example 3, last example, says find the polynomial function if its roots are 2 and I. And then I put right there, it's tricky. Okay, and the question is, why is this one a little bit tricky? Just out of curiosity, does anybody remember when we were doing imaginary numbers, okay, or complex numbers? Does anybody remember the way it was supposed to look? It had an A and a B. How did I write it? No, it's been 9 days. Does anybody remember how I used to write my complex numbers? They had 3 letters, an A, an I, and a B. So it's A plus or minus BI. Okay, this is the way I used to write them. Right? You say this is the general form of a complex number. Now, why do I tell you that? Focus on this part right there. You notice how the imaginary part has the plus or minus in front of it? That means that it happens 2 times every time. There's a positive and a negative to each imaginary number. That means that here, they gave me one of the imaginary answers, I, the positive I. Which one's missing that they're not showing me? The negative I. There's actually 3 answers here, but they're not showing it to me. So in other words, if one of the answers was 5 and then they put negative 2i, your job is to say, well, wait a minute, negative 2i, there should be a positive 2i as well. How do I know that? Because of that plus or minus. It's always plus or minus the imaginary part. Okay? So in our case right here, it looks like we only have 2 solutions, but we really have 3. We have x equal to 2. We have x equals to I. And we have x equals to negative I. That's the one you had to kind of create for yourself. It's always positive or negative of the imaginary. Okay? And they're never going to give you both. It's very rare that they list both of them. They only list one. Your job is to say, oh, I need 2. Okay? Now I'm going to give you a point of advice here. Whenever you deal with imaginaries, keep those together. You always want to do those first. Okay? So you'll see what I mean by the work that I'm doing right now. So let's go ahead. Let's move things over. This becomes x minus 2 equal to 0. This one becomes x minus I equal to 0. And this last one becomes x plus I equal to 0. What you're supposed to do next is get all those factors and just put them together, right? So x minus 2, x minus I, x plus I equal to 0. Now here's the most important part when you do imaginaries. This is what you want to do first. Do not multiply x minus 2 times x minus I first, or else you're just going to make a big mess. It doesn't mean you're going to get it wrong, but you're going to make your life really difficult. Multiply the imaginaries that are kind of matching. The x minus I and the plus I. Multiply those first. You're going to see why, okay, when we do this. So I'm going to multiply those first. So let me put my x minus 2 here. And now let's start multiplying these. So x times x, x times I. Okay, so that's going to be x squared plus xi when I multiply those. Now let me multiply the other two. Negative I times x and negative I times I. So negative I times x is negative xi. Negative I times I is negative I squared. Okay. What was I squared again? A negative 1, right? So don't forget that. Right now we're going to do that. So this is going to be x minus 2. What happens to the middle terms in that multicolored one? They're gone. These cancel. And what happens to the minus I squared? What does that become? Minus I squared. So the I squared becomes a negative 1, so it's minus a negative 1. So it becomes a plus 1. Okay? So remember, an I squared is a negative 1. Now there's a minus in front of that. So minus a negative 1 is a positive 1. Okay? So notice I don't have any trinomials I got to multiply. Just binomial times binomial. This becomes a little bit easier. Okay, so let's go ahead and multiply this out, then we're done. So here we go. Multiplying those two first. So x times x squared, that's x cubed. Then multiplying x times 1, that's positive x. And then let's multiply the others. Here, negative 2 times x squared, negative 2 times 1. So negative 2 times x squared is negative 2x squared. Negative 2 times 1 is a negative 2. All you have to do now is just put it in the right order, and you're done. So f of x is equal to, we start with x cubed. Then we'll go on to the x squared term. So negative 2x squared. And then plus an x. And then a minus 2. Now, is it wrong if you don't do this? No, it's not wrong. But I can guarantee you in the multiple choice test, the one that's all mixed up won't be there. The one in order will be there. And this is what your homework is like today, guys. Okay, you're just reorganizing your answers and telling me where they came from.